Welcome to Productive Joy with Dr. Christie, where fun meets action.
Hi, friends. Welcome to Productive Joy. This week, I have the honor of interviewing a really, really smart dude who has built an amazing business all on his own and has really kind of changed the face of compliance because he chose to take a risk, which I think is pretty awesome. So, Matt DiBlasi is going to talk to us a little bit about figuring out what your true north is and really finding who you are. And what I appreciate about Matt is his honesty around his driving force. So he is a Christian who is unapologetic. And I think that there is so much power in that. He knows who he is and he knows who has given him the strength to become the man that he is. And there is something to be said about somebody who really, really knows who they are. Couple things he didn't tell you. He and his wife are just delightful human beings, start to finish, and they have two beautiful children. He does talk about that a little bit, but one of the things that they choose to do is something that my husband and I also choose to do, and we touch on it in the interview, but I wanted to give you a little more information. So Jason and I and Matt and Megan both are marriage mentors. And what happened is our church decided to build a chapel for the sole purpose of outreach. It is a beautiful venue that any bride would want to get married in. Natural light, neutral colors, absolutely stunning and gorgeous start to finish. Big open doors. When you open the doors, you walk down the big aisle, right? All the things that every bride wants. But if you want to get married there, you have to go through 4 mentoring sessions with a couple from the church. And it's our job to breathe into these couples a little bit of light and life. Our hope with what we're doing is that people will have the right tools for their marriage because we're not okay with the 50-50 split statistic of how many marriages fail. We want to change that statistic. And so Jason and I have actually done almost 80 couples in the last 6 years. And those people now have babies and they have, bought houses and moved to other states and they've just done all kinds of amazing things. And they have some tools for their marriage. Now, I would love to tell you that every single couple has made it. There are a couple who haven't, but we're much, much better than the 50-50 split that is the statistic that we have here in America. So it's been such a blessing and so much fun. So Matt and Megan also are marriage mentors who are giving back to people just a little bit of wisdom and light, which is such a powerful, well, it's a powerful tool, but it's also a gift that not everybody is willing to give. It is very special that they give of their time that way. And I know it has been a blessing to Jason and I for sure. So we've learned a heck of a lot in that space. One of the things, people are always curious, well, what do you talk about? Because we do 4 hours, 4 separate hours. So the first one is all about your story. We talk about your family, faith, finances, foundation, and friends. So we talk about those 5 things and really dig deep into, do you have friends of your marriage? Friends of your marriage are the kind of people who will actually give you good advice when you're frustrated with your spouse instead of saying, you're right, she's terrible, we should go drink. Instead, they're saying, hey, what did you do to make her crazy? And what can we do to make this better? So that's the first session. The second session is about your design. And your design is really your experiences and your stressors and your ideals. And all, it's an acronym. So, right, design, it goes all the way through desires, experiences. Let's see if I can get them all. Stressors, ideals. I don't remember what the R is. No, design, S. G, no, wait, G, I can spell, I really can. Gifts and nature. That's what the last 2 are. So you're spelling out design. This is all about your personality, who you are, and how the 2 of you fit together as a couple. Then the third session is really the meat of the sandwich. It's the communication and conflict resolution, where you have the opportunity to learn more about how the 2 of you can fight fair, right? We don't want couples to not fight because that means somebody's always giving in. Instead, we don't want it to be an 11 on a scale of 1 to 10, but more like a 3, and not to last for 3 days, but more like 30 minutes. That's the hope for us. And then the last session, we do talk about sex, probably the most important thing that is left off because society would have us believe that that's the easiest part of your marriage. And it just isn't. It's not like in the movies, and it's not always perfect and everybody's breath smells good and nobody ever has to pee. Like, that's just not how it works. So we talk about the difference between affection and romance and how to continue to date your spouse. So I tell you all of that because it has been so powerful for our marriage, because we're constantly talking about other people and about their marriages. And it's also just been a game changer for us to be able to give back that way. See, I believe that one of the most important ways to have productive joy is to have something bigger than yourself. So, what are you doing that's giving back to your community, that's giving back to the people around you? Because that is really where joy meets action, where you have the opportunity to say, you know what, I know a little bit about this subject and I'm going to help others with it. So, I really think you're going to love Matt's interview. He talks about how he built a business and that he never really intended to go out and do that. But you know what? God had different plans. And so I'm hopeful that you really get a lot out of what he chooses to share with us. But I also hope that maybe that little conversation around marriage and working on your marriage might spark something in you as well. I've been married almost 25 years. It'll be 25 years, June of 2024. And it just keeps getting better. And that's because we put in the work and we do not settle, and we are willing to do the hard stuff. We always use the example of, it's like being married is like going to the gym, right? And the day that you get married is the day you sign the contract. But you have to go back and you have to try all the machines. And maybe you try all the machines at once, right? At the beginning, but you're sore and you're uncomfortable and you're like, I'm never doing that again. But in a marriage, you have to have leg day and you have to have arm day and you have to do some cardio and you have to eat right and you have to sleep right. And then you might see an ab, right? And yet, what often happens in marriage is, oh, we love each other. He knows I love him. I don't need to tell him, or I don't need to show him. And that's just not how it works. So I recommend you go to the gym. If you're working on your relationship, whatever that relationship is, work at it. Recognize that you don't just fall into happiness, you have to find it. Isn't that the definition of productive joy? You have to produce it yourself. You can't wait around for somebody else to make you happy. So I can't wait to share this episode with you. I'm really excited for you to hear from Matt and all of the great lessons that he's learned. And I hope that you walk away with a nugget or two of excitement and energy so that you can turn fun into action. Hi, friends. Welcome to Productive Joy. We are so excited to have a wonderful new guest today. His name is Matt DiBlasi, and he is a good friend of mine from church who has really built an empire of great things, and in doing so, really has found productive joy to be part of his everyday. And he's going to share that with us a little bit today and hopefully give us some nuggets of wisdom so that we can repeat his process. So hi, Matt. How are you?
I'm great, Christy. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
I am so excited that you're here. Genuinely excited. All right. So I have a question for you. And the question is pretty simple. People only choose to listen to podcasts that they're interested in. So I need you to tell us a little bit about your story in a way that people will want to stick around. So can you tell us a little bit about
I will try. I will try. I live in the world of compliance and HIPAA and OSHA. So we
Oh my
try
gosh,
to make that as
exciting.
exciting.
That is, yes.
Yeah, so riveting. So we just lost everybody, all the viewers right now. But
No.
Story is one of perseverance and of God's grace and grit. And so I think hopefully we get an opportunity to talk today about just how good God is, and ultimately, when you have a purpose in your life and you have a vision, you start playing an infinite game, and what that looks like. And I that's my hope for everybody out there, is that they can tap into what that purpose is that God has in their lives. And when you do, and you kind of get in that lane, I always equate it to being in a lazy river, right? And so, you kind of got the flow going with you, and you don't necessarily have to paddle quite as hard. You don't necessarily have to do all the things that you need to do if you're going against the current or with no current. And so it just seems a little bit easier that way. So that would be, what I would hope people want to tune into and hopefully tap into here as we go forward.
I love that. I love that, Matt. And the
image of a lazy river makes good sense to me, right? Because sometimes we're swimming upstream and sometimes we're letting it carry us, and it might not be going where we really want it to go. So, but let's rewind even further. So, until 2016, you were the VP of a sales company for IT, right? And then in 2016, you decided, you know what? No, I want to work on my own and I want to do my own thing. How did Abide come to be?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think ultimately it was God said, no, I want you to do something else. So in 2014, so I guess to kind of go even before the genesis of Abide, in 2014, I read a book, excuse me, by Andy Stanley. It's called Visioneering. And it's very much what I just stated in the opening of this conversation, which is God has a purpose for our lives. It follows the story of Nehemiah in the Old Testament and him rebuilding the wall, and how God put him in places and gave Nehemiah the favor of God to rebuild that wall, even though it seemed that at one point he was in jail. And so it's about how God can use everybody, no matter your past, and he does have a specific purpose for our lives. And so it just resonated with me. I never had, I guess, really dove into that and thought about that. And so God spoke to me. This is as I was VP of sales for that IT company in New York, but God just spoke to me and said, you're going to lead a company one day. It's going to be huge, and you're going to do it my way. You're going to lead people the right way. You're going to treat people the right way, which is obviously love them. And you're going to give me all the glory for it. And so I just had this overwhelming sense of buying into that as it was on my heart as I read the book. And I said, all right, God, I don't know what that means, but I'm in. And it took 2 years, but ultimately it was through working with the IT company. We worked primarily with eye care providers, and they started being audited for HIPAA compliance at that time. And so we looked into it, and there wasn't a whole lot of competition out there, or I guess resources at the time to provide services around HIPAA compliance and helping these medical practices implement compliance programs. And so we dove into it as an IT company, even though it was kind of outside of our realm a little bit. And we really, kind of started growing the business. The problem was it was a consulting business. And so the more our customer base grew, the more we had to hire more people, and it just wasn't a scalable business. In my mind, it was TurboTax for HIPAA was the solution to this, where it was an easy to use software solution that allowed these independent medical practices, not just eye care practices, but dental practices and all those practices that have the same struggles of wear many different hats on a daily basis, but not having the resources to accomplish what they need to accomplish. And so thinking about putting the power back in the practice's hands, and after going around a few circles and trying to figure out a way to develop this software, again, I didn't have any software experience. God placed my now business partner in my life, and so he has all this to go with what I have. And so he was very much, operationally sound and developmentally sound, and knew the technology. I knew what we needed to do in terms of build the software, how it needed to act. I knew I could sell it to the market, but he had all those skills that kind of complemented that. And so we went back and forth, honestly, for like 3 weeks. It wasn't really a long time. And because I had read that book and God had placed that vision on my heart, my wife and I kept saying, like, we think this is it. Like, we think this is what God has been calling us to. And so because I wanted to honor God from the beginning of starting Abide, I went and told the company that I was working with at the time that, hey, I found a partner. They had tried to do it. We had tried to do it together back and forth, but, for different reasons, it never got anywhere. And I said, I want you to be part of it. I want that company to be part of it. I also don't want to develop this in the background and then 6 months later, tell you I've got a company I'm starting and jump out. I wanted to honor God with it. Unfortunately, they told me that was my last week. And so then, I had no income coming in. We had no business. We had no name. We had no software, no nothing except the promise of God. And so we jammed about 18 months into 6 months, 18 months of development into 6 months, and launched in December of 2016. Again, with just the idea of, we could service 40, 50 customers that could at least, pay enough for me to feed our family or growing family at the time. And we ended up with like 350 or 400 customers that first year. And so we knew we were onto something, and we just haven't looked back since then. Obviously, there have been ups and downs throughout the way, but what God speaks into existence, it's going to happen.
So there are a couple different things that I want to address because you said some brilliant things there that people need to understand. First of all, it is clear that your faith is strong, but when people hear God spoke to me, or that He told me I was supposed to do this thing, everybody has a different take on that. And I know you, and I know that you have a relationship with God different from a religion. And so I just want to clarify that you're living what you believe to be exactly what God wants you to do because you have a relationship with Him. Am I accurate on that?
Yeah, totally. And I don't know if I had ever experienced that until reading that book, right? And it wasn't this loud, booming voice that, shook the walls of our house. It was I think I mentioned, it was just an overwhelming desire in my heart, one that I never had before. I never had a desire to lead a company, start a business. I think I thought I was always going to be a big league pitcher one day. And when that didn't happen, I was like, all right, and I always got to make it through. But yeah, it was just that, what tugs on your heart, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where God speaks to us a lot of times.
Definitely. Okay, so Matt, you were talking about your business and building this business and everything kind of falling into place for the business to happen quicker than maybe you anticipated, but God's timing is perfect. And He knew exactly what He was doing. But one of the things that really resonated with your story with me was integrity. You chose to say, hey, I'm going to do this. We were trying to do it. It didn't work, but we're going to go with this. And I want you to be aware. You think that shows up at work because you've worked in other companies. You said you started this one because you didn't feel like the one that you were in was doing all of the things that were right by people. So as a leader, how do you evoke integrity in others? How do you get them to want to do the right thing?
I think you have to talk about it a lot. We talk about these things all the time. Talk about trust a lot. We have a meeting once a month with our full team. We call it Legacy Tuesdays. And so we talk here about legacy a lot. And so it's not only legacy in our personal lives, but legacy in our professional lives as well. We all have hopefully a legacy that we can leave. And so legacy to us is not something you leave behind, but it's something you leave inside of somebody. Like, how do you make them feel, right?
Sure.
Something that's not tangible. And so with that comes with, the characteristics of someone who's going to leave a positive legacy. And so integrity has to be part of that, right? Trust, you have to be able to trust. Trust is the foundation of any good business. It has to be the foundation of our business here. We have to be able to trust our teammates. As we go to market, we're moving very fast every day. And so being open to communication and collaboration, owning up not only to the good things, but owning up to the mistakes as well. And that starts at the top, really. When our leaders can sit there and say, hey, no, my bad. Like, I messed up. That's my bad. We're going to move on. We're going to make it better. We're going to learn from this. We talk about paying our tuition all the time. Like, you can make mistakes around here, but the last thing you want to do is pay tuition twice for the same class. And so let's learn from our mistakes and let's get better from it. So the integrity aspect comes in to say, hey, I messed up and we're going to make it better next time. And that allows those around you to trust, but it has to be modeled for everybody. If it's not modeled and it's not talked about, it's likely not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, and you clearly are modeling from the top down, and you might not call it psychological safety, but you just gave a textbook definition of psychological safety. That's something that I work with companies on all the time. And it's about, can you make mistakes? Are you allowed to ask questions? Will the people that are over you, so to speak, or your bosses willing to own up to theirs as well? So you're demonstrating vulnerability for your team and making them want to be integritous. My company, I say we make work fun so people don't quit. But fun means people feel valued and appreciated.
Yeah.
But fun means that people have a voice and they know they're allowed to use it. And fun means people's talents are being leveraged so that they can contribute to the greater good. And it sounds to me like you make work fun. And I want to know more about Legacy Tuesdays, because our whole goal with Productive Joy is to give people a nugget that they can turn around and use right away, whether they're leading a team or they're following someone else, something they can use. So tell me how Legacy Tuesdays work.
Yeah, so it's our once a month full company meeting. Everybody comes in here into the tank. So on the other side of the camera here is our We got nice chairs and, little swivel desks and some other high tops. And we got a bunch of TVs, and we cram in here and we allow each team to talk about what they've done over the past month. We welcome our new team members. We celebrate records. That's a value of ours. So whether it's a best business month or best business quarter or best renewal rate, we're celebrating those things and just being as transparent as possible as to what's going on in the organization and then where we're going as well. But then also, again, I always add a little message at the end where we're talking about the legacy part, right? And we have a lot of our teammates are younger teammates. And so they're in their 20s, they're early to mid 20s, late 20s. And I remember where I was at that stage just a couple years ago. And I wish I had someone speaking some of these things into me at that point. And so whether they listen or not, they're gonna hear it. But again, once they start listening, once you get tired of saying it, that's when they're starting to listen.
Yeah.
And so we just keep going and we just keep talking about it. So it's usually, one topic that we touch on just this past week. So we do it's the first Tuesday of every month. So this just a couple of days ago, we did it for February. And we did it on the law of Mount Everest, which is a John Maxwell law, the 17 laws of leadership. The law of Mount Everest is one. So it's the further you elevate, the need for teamwork escalates. And so we feel like we're going to new levels and new heights this year. And so we just talked about how the need for teamwork at that point is so much more necessary. We can't do the things that we did last year if we want to go to where we want to go this year.
Yeah.
And so that's what we talked about, and the importance of having teammates around. Again, not only in your professional life, but in your personal life, and having those that can root you on and inspire you and encourage you to achieve the things that you were put on this earth to achieve.
I love that. And, something that you're doing is you're speaking into the next generation. You are equipping people to be great leaders one day outside of your organization or within your organization. And that takes energy and effort and time. So I'm commending you on the fact that you're choosing to grow your people. People will stick around when they feel like they're being poured into and grown. But you know what? You're not all work and no play. You are a wonderful family man who really gives back to the community as well. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that beautiful, sweet family of yours? And also what you two do, what you and Megan do to give back.
Yeah, no, now you're gonna make me emotional. We love family. We actually are. My oldest niece, she's a junior in college now, called my wife and I last night just to she has a project she's doing. So she interviewed us about having toddlers and what it's like to be, working and trying to parent and all of that. And we just talked about how much we love family. So we just love family. And I think marriage is so important when it comes to that. I think it gets forgotten about. And so marriage is a big thing that's on our hearts. We did a lot of premarital counseling, seen a lot of mistakes made in our lives when it comes to marriage, and ultimately the heartache and the destruction that comes with that afterwards. And so we think the core of the family is the marriage between mom and dad. And so we just want to pour into marriages. And so our church has done a great job of coming alongside of us, going ahead of us with that. And they built the chapel and they do they offer with this chapel and the service to do the wedding. They also offer complimentary marriage mentorship, which obviously you and Jason are a big part of as well. Yeah. And it's just been incredible. You probably know the numbers more than I do of the amount of couples that have been serviced. I know that we've lost count on how many we've worked with, but each one has been so special to be able to pour into, again, the younger generation, like you said, and give, or as our pastor says, equip those newly marrieds or soon to be marrieds with the right tools, the right resources, the right mindset going into marriage to allow it to thrive. And that's, one of God's greatest blessings is marriage. So beyond that, we have two little girls, which we love, and they keep us busy and on our toes and laughing. And our house is very much full of baby dolls and carriages. I mean, I turn around and there's a little classroom of baby dolls somewhere in our house throughout each room. So we have classes running, but we just love family and love to pour into other families.
So one of the questions that I like to ask is, what is your definition of productive joy? And I'm asking it now because you clearly have this successful business that is doing great things, and you have a successful family that is doing great things, and you're pouring back into your community, which is doing great things. So how do you define productive joy?
In my opinion, I think it's the only place you can truly find productive joy is living in God's will for you. And you will produce at that point, right? You'll produce fruit, you'll produce, act results with your business or your profession. You'll produce results within your family, but like truly living in God's will. And ultimately, I think that's just like prioritizing him first and foremost, and then other priorities. When you start putting work before family, or your kids before your marriage, or your family before your relationship with God, things start to get out of whack. And so I just try to keep those priorities. And I've noticed that when those priorities are in place, I have a sense of joy that surpasses understanding, when going through difficult times. And not to say that, it's always butterflies and lollipops and flowers, because it's not. There are hard days, but that's the anchor, right? Like that's what you can hold on to, and you get filled with that joy that sometimes doesn't make sense when you're going through difficult circumstances.
So I know that you are exceptional. However, I also know you just admitted things sometimes get out of whack. And I'm going to guess that anybody listening to this is going, okay, he's clearly got it all together, but I bet every once in a while there's an out of whack moment. So what brings you, like, what specifically, can you give us something specific that you do when you realize that your priorities have gotten out of line and you're focused on other things?
I was just talking with my business partner about this. I just try to give it back to God. I know that sounds easier said than done, but usually when I'm feeling strife and I'm feeling frustration, and I'm feeling the heaviness of what I'm going through, or I feel like the harder I work, the worse things get, it's typically because I'm not right where I need to be with God, and giving those things to him, praying about it and being intentional about that prayer. Again, I don't know where that lands for everybody, and that seems a little bit, easier said than done. But in all reality, that's what I've constantly come back to. It's like those times where I feel down and out or beaten up, it's because I'm not connecting, or I'm putting things in priorities that shouldn't be. And usually God can make you aware of that.
So what I hear, for those that might think differently than you or not fully understand, is you come back to center. You have a very clear north, and you are focused on making sure that God, your center, makes it back to where he belongs, and then everything else can fall into place around it. And I think out of whack, that's a good description of that, right? When we don't have our point of center, we're off balance and we struggle, and that takes our joy instead of giving it. So you are living proof that it can be done, and you can run a successful business and a successful family, and recognize that all of those things can happen together. So thank you for being willing to share. And the biggest takeaway that I have from you right now is really pouring back into the people around you and not keeping everything for yourself. Because when you have a goal that's bigger than you, then you are able to take the focus off of internal things and push them outward into helping others. So you've really personified that well. Well done.
I appreciate that.
All right. So I have some rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
All right.
Are you excited?
All right.
Okay.
I will
so
see.
I need to know, what's fun to you?
Sports. Yeah, I just love sports, love golf, love watching sports. Florida State. Yes. Right. So love watching sports.
Okay. So sports of any kind. Do you have a favorite? You mentioned golf. You played baseball.
Football, college football.
College football.
College football, yeah.
Yeah. When we had a year this year, didn't we? Oh my goodness. Are you still bitter? I'm a little bitter about our poor Knowles.
Very bitter. I wanted to make sure that I don't sound like a hypocrite of all the things I just talked about. So I'll stop talking before I say something I don't want to say.
I do know. I've seen the passion come out in you on that topic for sure. Okay. So I feel like this is one that people might really want to know from you. How do you find your best self on your worst days?
Ooh, perspective. It's just perspective. Even when things are tough, I just try to, when I'm driving into the office, I always try to make that be kind of what you said, that center point, right? Come back to focus. It's like, holy cow, like I'm driving to my office, right? Like with our employees and our team, and I get to help manage and dictate. So yeah, just perspective, just try to get perspective back.
Oh, I love that. I love that. All right, last question. If people only remember one thing from this conversation today, what's the one takeaway that you really want people to grab?
I mean, my story is just, it's a testament. There's nothing impossible with God, and again, I don't know where that lands with everybody, but I encourage everybody to at least check it out. Because again, he took I didn't give my background. I was a 2.17, I had a 2.17 GPA coming out of Florida State. I went to school for baseball and all the extracurricular activities, everything but school. It took me 5 years to graduate. So like, it just doesn't make sense. Like my story does not make sense without it. And that's why through this conversation, I just wouldn't be doing it justice to sit here and say like, I came up with these things, or, this is my thought process. It's ultimately a lot of things that I've learned over time, a lot of things that I've learned the hard way, but God, just grabbed my attention through that book and put me on a path that I just don't want to screw up at this point.
So I hear he uses all of us and he finds our gifts. And if we'll listen, he will do some pretty remarkable things. So thank you for reminding us of that. That's a mouthful. Us of that today, Matt. And thank you for your time. And for those of you listening, thank you so much for spending some time with Productive Joy today. We hope that you're going to be able to take some nuggets of wisdom and turn that fun into action.